Hi and welcome to Debunk File. My name is Sep and today we're going to be talking about the history of ARGs. On YouTube, at least in the horror sphere, ARGs are one of the premier forms of storytelling and are very popular, especially right now. In case you are new, an ARG stands for an alternate reality game, and is basically a story that often uses the real world as their platform and is fueled by viewer interaction. Some very popular notable ones today would be The Sun Vanished on Twitter and Local 58 on YouTube, just to name a few. Now today we aren't here to talk about one single ARG in specific, but what we are going to do is delve into the history of ARGs as a whole. And before we begin, I'd love to shout out Ali Original for giving us this wonderful idea, and I'd also like to thank Lucifer is Love for helping us heavily with the researching. But now, with all the shoutouts out of the way, let's talk about the history of ARGs. ARGs have been around long before YouTube, believe it or not. It's commonly believed that the idea for the ARG actually derived from those old choose-your-own-adventure books, and when you think about it, that really does make a lot of sense. But to my knowledge, the first ever actual ARG started way back in the late 1970s. In 1976, a novel was titled Masquerade. In the book, it contained images that sparked a treasure hunt by giving clues that brought you to a supposed golden hair. This, like most ARGs, was incredibly cryptic and took a whole 6 years for anyone to find. The man who found it was named Kent Thomas, who supposedly found it out of sheer luck. After finding the prize, he took a picture with the author of the novel, and it was kinda strange to say the least. He's completely covering a face and has a pretty strange, very fake looking mustache on. Now, being the first ARG, this one also had a phenomenon which is unfortunately very common with ARGs today, and that is a game jacker. A game jacker is someone who tries to capitalize off people that are invested in an ARG and tell their own narrative. These are in just about every case done in a significantly lower quality. In the case of the Masquerade ARG, that definitely reigns true. You see, after Kent Thomas won the prize, he capitalized off it by forming a company named Hairsoft, and created a game for basically all home computers titled Hair Razor Prelude, which, like the novel, it was a giant puzzle and you could either receive the hair itself or $30,000. The catch, however, was that this game wasn't just hard like the original puzzle, it was straight up impossible, and to make matters worse, it was overpriced for the time. Sometime later, Hair Razor Finale was released for the same price as the original, and if you wanted to solve the puzzle, it was mandatory. So we had two games released that were wildly overpriced to capitalize off the novel, and oh yeah, the puzzle itself was essentially impossible to figure out. So in short, Kent Thomas was a game jacker that won the prize and made his own puzzle to cash grab off of it. But what if I told you it gets even worse? Well, supposedly there were this group of people before Kent that actually correctly figured out the entire puzzle, but for some reason when they dug, they just barely missed the treasure. Kent saw them there digging off of pure coincidence, found the treasure, and became the winner, so he didn't really find the puzzle. It then came out that Kent Thomas wasn't even a real name, and was just a pseudonym for a man named Dougal Thompson, which explains the strange disguise. Dougal Thompson was apparently a business partner with a man named John Gard, and John lived with a lady named Veronica Robinson. Now, Veronica at the time was the girlfriend to the man that thought up the entire puzzle, and while she didn't know the exact location, she knew it was Ampthil. Dougal effectively manipulated Veronica into falsely finding the prize, and then game-jacked the entire thing. So that concludes the first ever ARG. Of course, there's much more to the story than that, but that's just a basic synopsis of what went down. Another very early example of an ARG is known as The Secret, and it was a treasure hunt in 1982. It started off much like the aforementioned ARG as a novel by Byron Price, and unlike the other book, this one is much more on the nose with how it presents itself, as on the first page it literally says, "Welcome, we've been expecting you. You are about to embark on a fantastic adventure." And the book was not wrong. Byron traveled across the United States before publishing the novel and hid 12 separate treasures, all in completely different locations. Whenever a treasure was found, there was a safety deposit box that he made and would open for you, and it was full of prizes, largely consisting of jewels and other things that you would expect to hear in a fantastical novel. In the novel, he also gave lore. Apparently, there were 12 tribes called the Fair People, each consisting of different races of creatures, whether that be goblins, dragons, or anything in between. Centuries ago, these tribes searched for a new home and stumbled across North America, and they each had a gemstone. Eventually, the humans showed up, invading, which made the fair men revert to hiding. Eventually, a truce was made where the fair men would come out of hiding and live in harmony, but the humans had to find the gemstones, and we still haven't found nearly all of them yet. So far, only 2 have been found. One was in Chicago a few years after the book's release, and after that, it would be decades before the next one was found. It was so long, in fact, that Byron simply moved on to other projects and forgot all about it. That was until 2004, where at long last, another one was finally found. Unfortunately though, this ARG does not have a happy ending, as in 2005, Byron was tragically taken from us in a car accident. Because of this, and a multitude of other reasons, this ARG will probably never be completed. Not only are the treasures unbelievably hard to find, but since the 80s, there have been changes in landscaping, and Byron himself was the only person who truly know where they all were. But let's look on to the more positive side. This ARG took inspiration from the Masquerade and ran with it, and was also the first case of a world being created within our own, and that was something that almost every ARG after it did, and still do today. If you couldn't yet tell, a lot of the very early ARGs were treasure hunts that took place in the real world and included real prizes. But let's look at a different one. One about video games. One titled Polybius. Yes, believe it or not, the ultra-popular Polybius is actually an ARG. It revolved around something in our real world, in this case an arcade cabinet in Portland, Oregon, and we were on a search to find out if it was real or not. So yeah, it's most definitely an ARG, and is an incredibly influential one, as it was the first known ARG ever about a video game, as the start of it began in 2000. This ARG most definitely inspired Petscop and countless other video game ARGs out there. Around this time, the internet was becoming very popular, and when you look today, almost every single ARG is online, but one of the first ones to ever do it was Ong's Hat. Now, a bit of backstory. ARGs revolving around various media already happened quite a bit around this time, as just a few years earlier the Blair Witch Project did one, and that was also a very influential one. But this one might have been even more influential. Blair Witch is known as being the first one to ever be online, which is a huge deal because practically all ARGs are online nowadays. But Ong is very significant because it was the first ARG ever to be independent. It wasn't made by any large companies, just some random people. Now, as seen with the Blair Witch Project, ARGs were being made to promote movies, and one simply called The Beast was created to promote the film AI, Artificial Intelligence. The premise of the game is that there is a character named Janine Sala who investigates her friend's death and discovers a cover-up involving murders and artificial intelligence. Clues were hidden in the film's trailers, ads, posters, and more, and it is widely regarded as being the first horror ARG ever, which again is a huge deal. This ARG was such a success that people wondered if the movie could even match the interest in the game, and it didn't. Now that ARGs have evolved to the online world, let's talk about where the vast majority of them lie. That, of course, is YouTube. To my knowledge, the first ever ARG on YouTube is actually a very popular one, and that is Lonely Girl 15. This ARG started off innocently as it began with just a girl making videos with her webcam, but quickly evolved into a massive story with multiple characters and multiple channels. Not only was this the first YouTube ARG as mentioned earlier, but it was the first truly viral channel on YouTube, as articles like the New York Times reported about it, and it was the first channel that showed that YouTube wasn't just a place for stupid little videos. It was a place of endless creativity, a place to start basically making an entire interactive show, and, even better, to make money. The Human Pet was another one. That started late in 2006 and was the first truly terrifying one, as it revolved around a human pet, a person that was held captive against his will by some insane dude. Probably the most important revelation here is that it birthed the first ever video on YouTube about what ARGs were. Someone was so interested in the human pet that he felt he needed to explain ARGs for people in general. This showed the rising popularity that ARGs were going through on YouTube at the time. Another early ARG on YouTube was the Wyoming incident. This ARG revolved around supposed TV hacking, which apparently caused the very few people that saw it in Wyoming to get sick and vomit. This was another ARG that used multiple different channels and even a forum to get its messages across. This one is also incredibly influential, as it was the first ARG about a TV hack, which is relatively common trend now, especially with Local 58 and the other ARGs that spawned since. And the next ARG up to bat is probably still the biggest ARG of all time, Marble Hornets. This ARG is so big that even years ago, way before I knew what an ARG actually was, I still knew what Marble Hornets was. This was the ARG about Slenderman, and while it wasn't what made him a household name, I don't think he would have truly been as huge as he was without the series. This ARG started a whole wave of Slenderman ARGs, and some of those were influential as well. This ARG started the use of video distortion, which is used in practically every ARG nowadays. Now, it didn't do it nearly as intense as Meat Sleep did, but it is the one that started the trend of using distorted sound effects, and in the ARG world that is literally used like everywhere. And those are the very influential early ARGs out there. These would all set the groundworks that practically all ARGs follow. But in the modern age, there are still plenty of ARGs that took from these, added their own spin on it, and then became incredibly influential themselves. Meat Sleep is a prime example of this, as it took the distortion that Marble Hornets started and turned it up a million notches. Now, it's hard to stumble across an ARG that doesn't feature distorted audio and filmmaking nowadays. We've also got Petscop, an ARG that took the "this game does not exist" formula from Polybius and ran with it, creating their own thing, which is now inspiring tons of other ARGs about games that never even existed. Taking from the TV hacking we saw in the Wyoming incident, we now have Local 58, an ARG about a really creepy TV program, which again is inspiring tons of other ARGs from it. There is one new type of ARG that truly began very recently, that as far as I know, didn't take inspiration from anything before it, and that is the Twitter ARGs. This all began with The Sun Vanished, and it was a genius idea. Tweets are very small and easy to digest, so it really was a perfect idea to tell your story using Twitter, and especially with the inclusion of polls, it really was a match made in heaven, as the interaction element of these became very easy to do there. And there we have it. That was the history of ARGs. We have kind of alluded to this, but unfortunately, a lot of ARGs today really aren't doing anything new. A lot of them are just taking things from these aforementioned ARGs and aren't really adding anything interesting to the table. Every now and then, though, a huge revelation is made as things like the Sun Vanish only happened last year. That leads me to wonder, what other marvelous revelations will happen in the ARG world in the future? I hope you enjoyed this video. It was a very different one, but if you enjoyed it a lot, let us know. Make sure to spread out this channel with word of mouth, as it is truly the best way to grow. If you have any other suggestions for topics to cover, you should send them to our Instagram at DebunkFile, our Twitter at TrueGIF, our Discord also at DebunkFile, and subreddit. I hope you enjoyed this video. As always, my name is Seth from DebunkFile. Bye guys.